Hey guys, Postron here, and today let's talk about some of the uniques that have been released. Spoiler season has been upon us for like a week or so. Last week I did it basically like a lot of YouTubers do. I have like a new unique and I make a video about every single one of them, right? But this time around I focused a little bit more on builds. So we're gonna do one video or maybe like one more where we cover all the spoilers and talk about what I think about them, maybe some applications for them. But yeah, let's get right into it. Now, first item here is Melding of the Flash, and basically at the cost of -76 to all elemental resistances. Elemental resistances are limited by your highest maximum elemental resistance instead. Now, this item is really interesting because it has a great upside, but also a great cost. So basically what this does is that you want to get to 90 max res, which is the highest possible max res on one of your elements through like, I don't know, items, purity, you only need one, right? And you want to get that to 90 from 75 to 90, and then all your resistances can go to 90. So theoretically, that is crazy. A crazy defensive boost, right? But there's a few caveats to this. Number one, actually getting one of your resistances to 90 max res is no easy feat, right? For some builds, it's going to be easier than for others. But for some builds, it's just going to be extremely hard because even if you get your resistance to 90 and even if you sacrifice a jewel slot, right? You might still not even get that much out of it. You might have just gotten more out of it, just stacking more life, stacking more energy shield, having other ways of damage reduction, right? So even if you get to 90%, maybe not the best, but the biggest thing here is the minus to all elemental resistances. And this is actually no meme. Like if we go here, it's very hard to dismiss. It's very easy to dismiss this, right? But if you look at this, that is 228 resistances you have to get. Now, if you think about how easy it is to get that, look at item suffixes, for example, right? A tier 1 item suffix, for example, on a ring goes up to 48. So if we divide this by 48, we would need about five full suffixes to replace this. And the problem is a lot of min-max builds are very much tight, right? They're min-maxed to the brink. They're at exactly 75 or like 76, 77, very much min-maxed. So getting like basically 2 items worth of resistances on top might mean you cannot use certain uniques, which might cost you a lot of damage. Sometimes it's going to cost you other defensive mechanisms, right? So this downside is no joke. That's what I'm going to say. But here I have to say the upside. I mean, this is just a dream come true for Mage Blood builds and Righteous Fire builds. So that makes this item already very high caliber, right? You have to get a Mage Blood first, and you have to make a build around it, and then you can use this efficiently. With Mage Bloods, you basically get, I don't know, hundreds of resistances just from your flasks that you would run anyways, because they give you reduced damage taken. You go Sapphire, you go Topaz, you go Ruby. Insane, right? Sure. On Righteous Fire, you want to stack maximum fire res anyways, so the other ones just go up for free, quote unquote. Also, Righteous Fire has a lot of rare gear, right? Because those are very good to scale dot damage. And so you're going to have a lot of suffixes open. So it's going to be easier to cap. So there is a lot of applications for this. I just want to temper your expectations. If you don't have a Mage Blood, this might fit onto not as many builds as you might think. Next up, let's talk about Crystallised Omniscience. And on first glance, you might think this is something for an attribute stacker, but it's actually the complete opposite. Now, this item basically transforms all your bonus attributes to Omniscience. Now, first up, every character has just on its own 60 attributes already inherited. That's what it gets from the start, and that will not get converted. So just to make that clear, so it's always -60 if you add up all your attributes in here, right? For example, in this character, I would have 164, right? Strength plus 181 dexterity, and then plus 269 intelligence, right? That would come out to 614. Then you do -60, and this is how you know your omniscience. Now, for this example, let's really quickly see what we get. So 1% to all elemental resistances per 10. So that would be 55 all elemental resistances, and penetrate 1% elemental resistances per 10. Now, this is a little bit unusual. This is something you don't see very often. This is actually just generic elemental pen. This is not fire pen, lightning pen, or cold, which makes it quite interesting for some builds. And then at the end here, you have attribute requirements can be satisfied by 23% of omniscience. So this should be not really a problem on most builds. I'm also pretty sure this probably goes up to like 25 or 30 or something. So this makes it a lot easier for some builds to meet attribute requirements. But in total, the big line here is the penetration. Talking about the penetration, for some builds, it is incredibly hard to get elemental pen. For example, if you look on POB, there's only very small sources that actually have generic And if you look at, for example, elemental penetration, right, which is a gem you can get at level 20, this gives only 28 penetration, and there's no awakened elemental penetration. So this is all you get for one support gem, and that could also be like 40% more damage or 35% more damage. So you really don't want to run it, but on some builds you just have to, right? So for example, on a wand build where you just stack all the flat damage that you can get, right? Whether it's lightning, whether it's fire, whatever. Some builds just cannot be picky when it comes to that. It also makes itemization easier, but to be fair, I don't think that's going to be a point because I'm pretty sure this item is going to be like very expensive, at least it looks like it. Now, that much for the penetration part, but the 1% to all element resistances is also nice for example, like negating this downside, right, which we just talked about. But in total, I'm not really sure where this item really fits. Now, I compared it to some items on POB, and it seems like a very strong Emmy, but a little bit weird. I don't really know where to fit it in just yet. I just know one thing that you have to understand here is that you actually lose all the value from the attributes. So for example, if you have strength, right, let's say I have 400 strength. Now, per 10 strength, I get 5 HP, right? So if we look at that, if I have 400 strength, that means 400 divided by 2, right? I'm losing 200 fat life. Same with the inherent energy heal bonus from intelligence, the attributes you get from dexterity, the evasion you get from dexterity, the mana you get from it. All of those bonuses are gone. You also cannot use any item like attribute stacking stuff anymore. You cannot run Shaper Gloves. You cannot run anything that scales off of dexterity, strength. I mean, you can, right? But you don't have any of those attributes anymore. You now have Omniscience. So there's a lot of builds that just straight up won't be able to use this. But I think on some builds, it will be extremely strong. So I'm thinking about like builds that do not want to run a +2 ME, for example, right? +2 to level, so not Spellcaster. That also don't need anything specific from, for example, Strangle Grasp, right? The ME that gives you 4 annoyance, that is also an alternative. Then there's also Ulnatol's Vow, which gives you a 7th link. So there's a lot of competition, but I think there will be fits for this. For example, as I said, builds that are really, really starved on just generic elemental penetration. Then let's go over Sudden Dawn. I don't know what exactly happened with this unique. I think that GGG in general has done a great job making super competitive uniques. That's what they said they wanted to do, right? Not everything can be a hit. This is kind of garbage, not gonna lie. Even if this was a 100% chance on kill, it would probably still be bad. You can recharge when you kill an enemy. I mean, I don't know what to even say about this. It's just absolute like dog shit, right? Hopefully this gets reworked at some point again. Overall, I'm still very happy with the quota they're having. They can't make every unique perfect. Yeah, this one is kind of a doozy. Then we have Annihilating Light. Now, as simple as the staff seems, this staff is bonkers for most spellcasters. Now, just a little bit of an info on this up front. Elemental skills deal triple damage. Now, the way you put this into POB is you go into config and you write here 200% more damage, right? Double damage would be 100% more damage. Triple damage would be 200% more damage. Now, with that out of the way, one thing I gotta mention is that this does not scale with stuff like double damage. So if you have double damage, this overrides that. So it makes double damage completely useless. That goes for some notables. You can't use Paradoxica with this anyways. There's like the Pride Watcher's Eye. So a few things don't work with this, but other than that, it doesn't really matter. So this is straight up 200% more damage at the cost of 63% reduced elemental resistances. So I don't know what the hell will happen with the staff or how much it will cost, where it will drop. Will this be like another chase unique that costs like Squire level amount of currency? I have no idea. Because I put this into POB on some of my casters with like min-maxed gear, like, right, like +5 staff with like crit multi, maybe +1 power charge, whatever, right? Whatever you can get. And this is just straight up better than some absolute mirror tier staffs. Now, there's obviously builds where this is not going to fit, right? Some power charge stackers, it's not going to fit. Getting 2 extra power charges from your staff is kind of irreplaceable. Or, for example, some builds really, really want the extra void batteries, right? But overall, I can't see this not being a super big chase item. On attack builds, I don't think this does much because it just seems like a worse Paradoxica if you think about it. Like Paradoxica lets you run a shield. Like Paradoxica gives you double damage, right? Which is obviously not as good. It's only 100% more damage, not 200% more damage like the triple damage would be. But if you think about it, it just lets you get away with so many things. Paradoxica can have other stats. It doesn't have a downside like here with the reduced elemental resistances. So I don't know, it's just kind of weird. I also want to mention that the reduced elemental resistances on this one actually do not work with Doriani's. Now the thing is, for example, this wording here on the Melding of the Flesh, this one works with Doriani's because it's at minus 76, but the way this one works, the reduced part actually reduces your negative, so it's kind of weird. It's actually a downside, just to point that out because some people were saying that on Reddit. But yeah, overall, crazy caster stuff. In the builds that will fit, it will fit, for example, Self-Cast, which they wanted to promote. This is going to be bonkers, one of the chase items of this league. Then at the end here, we have a Keystone that I kind of tried to fit in last minute here because it just got released when I filmed this video. And this is Precise Technique. This is a very interesting Keystone. We don't exactly know where it is, but it is kind of greenish and it has to do with accuracy. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be somewhere on the right side of the tree here. But let's quickly get into what this actually does. 40% more attack damage if accuracy rating is higher than maximum life. Never deal critical strikes. Now, what an interesting Keystone, right? So this kind of reminds me of number one, Resolute Technique, right? Your hits can't be evaded, never deal critical strikes as well. And it reminds me of Elemental Overload, which basically allows you to crit, but it takes away all your extra damage from crits for also 40% more damage. So very interesting here that they give you another alternative to crit. I really, really like this. I'm not sure it's enough right now to kind of combat some of the crit out there. Like a lot of builds are just best at crit. It just is what it is. You get extra crit multi as another scaling method, right? But this might be interesting for some builds, especially for hollow palm builds, right? If you think about stacking dexterity, that's already a lot of accuracy. They usually don't have that much HP. They more rely on stuff like, for example, like Magebane, right? Which is just spell suppression. That's damage reduction. You don't need that much life for it. And you also have damage reduction in the form of Iron Reflexes. So these builds don't have much HP, so you don't need to get much accuracy anyways. But you're also stacking dexterity, so that just gives you accuracy. So you don't have to do much to get this upside in those builds. Now for accuracy builds, this is unfortunately completely garbage, and I'll tell you why right now. One of the biggest uniques for accuracy stacking is Oscarm, and this one gives you 2% critical strike chance per 200 accuracy, which on a dex stacker is basically going to cap you from whatever, right? You don't have to invest into anything crit related. This will just cap you straight up. So there's no upside in an accuracy stacker. It makes no sense, right? But for some builds, this is very interesting. I'm looking at Hollow Palm. I'm looking at Facebreaker also. Now, Facebreaker doesn't have anything inherently that would give you accuracy. But the thing is, you really don't want to go crit with Facebreaker usually, because you would have to use this shitty-ass talisman. I actually forgot how it's called. What was it called? Rigwald's Curse, right? Which nowadays, the amulet slot is super competitive. So just to go crit, you would have to go with this Emmy. It's like a nightmare, right? So those two builds come to mind immediately. I'm sure there is more to it. I really, really like it. If I would have to guesstimate where it is on the tree, I would say it probably mirrors Resolute Technique. So it would probably be somewhere here, but like there's already 2 Keystones here, so maybe in there. I don't know exactly. I really like that they give us more options than just crit. If anything, in the future, they'll probably put out more stuff for non-crit stuff, and maybe this is then one of the tools in the future. As for next patch, I don't know how much this is actually going to be used, but I love that it exists. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much. And yeah, so far, spoiler season has been really, really fun. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this stuff here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do something about it. If you didn't catch my streams anytime in the last few days, I'm probably going to go Elemental Explosive Arrow Ballista at league start, and I'm going to make a full build guide about that. So if you're here for that, look out after patch notes. I'm going to take like a day off from streaming and just make that guide, push it out as fast as possible. Until then, I hope you're as hyped as me about these uniques. I didn't really want to talk about divination cards. I honestly just don't give a fuck. divination cards don't hype me in the slightest. But yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.